Sqilah. Enhancing careers. Containerization is a system of freight transport based on a range of steel intermodal containers. Containers are built to standardized dimensions, and can be loaded and unloaded, stacked, transported efficiently over long distances, and transferred from one mode of transport to another, container ships, rail and semi-trailer trucks, without being opened. Containerization has its origins in early coal mining regions in England from the late 18th century on. The U.S. container shipping industry dates back to 1956, when 58 containers aboard a refitted tanker ship sailed from Newark to Houston. What was new in the USA about this innovation was the idea of using large containers that were never opened in transit between shipper and consignee and that were transferable on an intermodal basis, among trucks, ships and railroad cars. It was a logical next step that container sizes could be standardized so that they could be most efficiently stacked and so that ships, trains, trucks and cranes at the port could be specially fitted or built to a single size specification. This standardization would eventually apply across the global industry. The standard sizes and fitting and reinforcement norms that now exist evolved out of a series of compromises among international shipping companies, European railroads, U.S. railroads, and U.S. trucking companies. In 1961, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, set standard sizes. The two most important, and most commonly used sizes even today, are the 20-foot and 40-foot lengths. The 20-foot container, referred to as a 20-foot equivalent unit, TU, became the industry standard reference with cargo volume and vessel capacity now measured in TUs. The 40-foot length container, literally 2 TUs, became known as the 40-foot equivalent unit, FEU, and is the most frequently used container today. The use of containers dominates commercial international shipping. The advantages of packing goods into containers include the ease of intermodal transit, the opportunity to offer consumers a door-to-door service, speed and efficiency of loading and unloading, security of goods during transit. Exporters load their merchandise in boxes that are provided by the shipping companies. They are then delivered to the docks by road, rail, or a combination of both for loading on to container ships. Prior to containerization, huge gangs of longshoremen would spend hours fitting various items of cargo into different holds. After containerization, large crews of longshoremen were no longer necessary at port facilities and the profession changed drastically. Cargo that once arrived in cartons, crates, bales, barrels or bags now comes in factory-sealed containers, with no indication to the human eye of their contents, except for a product code that machines can scan and computers trace. This system of tracking has been so exact that a 2-week voyage can be timed for arrival with an accuracy of under 15 minutes. Raw materials arrive in factories in sealed containers less than an hour before they are required in manufacture, resulting in reduced inventory costs. Containerization greatly reduced the expense of international trade and increased its speed, especially of consumer goods and commodities. Meanwhile, the port facilities needed to support containerization changed. One effect was the decline of some ports and the rise of others. Inland ports on waterways incapable of deep draft ship traffic also declined from containerization in favor of seaports. With intermodal containers, the job of sorting and packing containers could be performed far from the point of embarkation. Initially, very few people foresaw the extent of the influence of containerization on the shipping industry. Most economic studies of containerization merely assumed that shipping companies would begin to replace older forms of transportation with containerization, but did not predict that the process of containerization itself would have a more direct influence on the choice of producers and increase the total volume of trade. The widespread use of ISO standard containers has driven modifications in other freight-moving standards, gradually forcing removable truck bodies or swap bodies into standard sizes and shapes and changing completely the worldwide use of freight pallets that fit into ISO containers or into commercial vehicles. Improved cargo security is also an important benefit of containerization. The cargo is not visible to the casual viewer and thus is less likely to be stolen. The doors of the containers are usually sealed so that tampering is more evident. Some containers are fitted with electronic monitoring devices and can be remotely monitored for changes in air pressure, which happens when the doors are opened. This reduced the thefts that had long plagued the shipping industry. Use of the same basic sizes of containers across the globe has lessened the problems caused by incompatible rail gauge sizes in different countries. Containers have become a popular way to ship private cars and other vehicles overseas using 20 or 40-foot containers. ISO's container standards. There are more than 20 internationally recognized types of container, including refrigerated units and open-topped containers, but there are two basic sizes. Their dimensions in metric terms are 20 feet, 589 centimeters, L, into 235 centimeters, W, into 239 centimeters, H, minus volume 33.2 cubic meters. 40 feet, 1,203 centimeters, L, into 235 centimeters, W, into 239 centimeters, H, minus volume 67.7 cubic meters. 45 feet, 48 feet, and 53-foot containers are domestic standard containers in U.S. Container capacity is often expressed in 20-foot equivalent units, TEU. An equivalent unit is a measure of containerized cargo capacity equal to one standard 20 feet, length, times 8 feet, width, container. The maximum gross mass for a 20 feet, 6.1 meters, dry cargo container is 24,000 kilograms, and for a 40 feet, it is 30,480 kilograms. Allowing for the tare mass of the container, the maximum payload mass is therefore reduced to approximately 22,000 kilograms for 20 feet, 6.1 meters, and 27,000 kilograms for 40 feet, 12 meters, containers. Full container load, FCL. A full container load, FCL, is an ISO standard container that is loaded and unloaded under the risk and account of one shipper and only one consignee. In practice, it means that the whole container is intended for one consignee. FCL container shipment attracts lower freight rates than an equivalent weight of cargo in bulk. Ideally, FCL means the container is loaded to its allowable maximum weight or volume. In practice, the FCL in the ocean freight does not always mean packing a container to its full payload or full capacity. Less than container load, LCL. Less than container load, LCL, is a shipment that is not large enough to fill a standard cargo container. The abbreviation LCL formerly applied to less than car load for quantities of material from different shippers or for delivery to different destinations which might be carried in a single railway car for efficiency. LCL freight was often sorted and redistributed into different railway cars at intermediate railway terminals en route to the final destination. Containerization increases the fuel costs and reduces the capacity of the transport as the container itself, in addition to its contents, must be transported. Stackable standardized containers are usually heavier than packaging with less stringent requirements. For certain bulk products, this makes containerization unattractive. However, for most goods, the increased fuel costs and decreased transport efficiencies are more than offset by the savings in handling costs. Containers have been used to smuggle contraband. The vast majority of containers are never subjected to scrutiny due to the large number of containers in use. In recent years, there have been increased concerns that containers might be used to transport terrorists or terrorist materials into a country undetected. The U.S. government has advanced the Container Security Initiative, CSI, intended to ensure that high-risk cargo is examined or scanned, preferably at the port of departure. Empty containers. Containers are intended to be used constantly, being loaded with new cargo for a new destination soon after having been emptied of previous cargo. This is not always possible, and in some cases, the cost of transporting an empty container to a place where it can be used is considered to be higher than the worth of the used container. Shipping lines and container leasing companies have become expert at repositioning empty containers from areas of low or no demand, such as the U.S. West Coast, to areas of high demand such as China. However, damaged or retired containers may also be recycled in the form of shipping container architecture, or the steel content salvaged. Loss at sea. Containers occasionally fall from the ships, usually during storms, between 2,000 and 10,000 containers are lost at sea each year. Containers lost in rough waters are smashed by cargo and waves and often sink quickly. Although not all containers sink, they seldom float very high out of the water, making them a shipping hazard that is difficult to detect. Freight from lost containers has provided oceanographers with unexpected opportunities to track global ocean currents, notably a cargo of friendly floaties. In 2007, the International Chamber of Shipping and the World Shipping Council began work on a code of practice for container storage, including crew training on parametric rolling, safer stacking, the marking of containers and security for above-deck cargo in heavy swell.